What is going on, guys? It's ThePowerBauer 2 here. Now, I've sort of always viewed myself as very different from the rest of my family. I can't really grow any facial hair besides a little peach fuzz right here. I played soccer instead of football, and I'm pretty much the only Nintendo fan at this point. Being different like me can sometimes alienate you, but for some people, you will be adored and admired for how different you are and for what new things you bring to the table. Wow, this became a lot more inspirational than I originally thought it would. Every gaming franchise has a style or gameplay mechanics that are carried over from title to title. You know, the staples of a franchise like jumping for Mario, spin dashing for Sonic, and sucking other guys for Kirby. Wait, the majority of games in a certain franchise adhere to all the main staples of the games with just small tweaks and adjustment to make the game at least feel a little bit unique. But what about those games that have a little more than just a small change? What about those games that are unlike any other in the franchise and tried something that nobody expected? The commonly used term for these games is the black sheep of the franchise. These games usually have a lot of controversy and questions surrounding them when they are first revealed. This can be for gameplay changes or for something as small as just a graphical change. Fans riot because they aren't receiving the game that they think would be the best and they aren't open to any change. However, many of these games have garnered a big following as years pass, and some are even considered some of the best in their respective franchises. Almost every gaming franchise has a game like this, so why don't we look at a few and see what makes them different and how their fan perception has changed over the years. The Mario franchise is arguably the most popular and recognizable gaming series of all time. Everyone knows Mario. He's that fat Italian plumber who has saved the same girl for over 30 years while getting nothing more than a kiss, and even getting as far as curved while Bowser was the other option. Super Mario Sunshine is easily the most unique and unexpected Mario title for its respective series of 3D Mario games. I mean, in what other Mario game can you use a Super Soaker? Rhetorical question, the answer is none! Mario took the leap into 3D with Mario 64, and I think we can all agree it's one of the greatest and most revolutionary games of all time. This made the expectations for the next 3D Mario game through the roof, especially because it was released on a new and more powerful console with the GameCube. And what did we get?
What's this icky paint-like goop? It's moving!
Yeah, people were not too pleased when they saw this. I mean, let's first look at the similarities to Mario 64. Mario can still triple jump and side flip. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Mario's moveset is nowhere near to any other Mario title because much of his movement revolves around Flood. Flood allows Mario to spray things with water because that's obviously the most threatening weapon of all time. Ha! Now you're wet. Flood has 3 interchangeable nozzles in Hover, Rocket, and Turbo Nozzle. I will give you 5 seconds to try to figure out which nozzle does which, starting now. Hover lets you hover, Rocket shoots you like a rocket, and Turbo lets you run at turbo speeds. You probably didn't need that full 5 seconds. These nozzles allow for a very unique experience unlike any other Mario game, which has become wildly popular over the years. Everyone was still in Super Mario 64 hype mode when this came out and only wanted the same thing again, and that led to a lower fan appeal. But as fans began to take their heads out of their asses and actually looked at the unique style of Mario Sunshine, it has become one of the biggest fan favorites in the entire Mario series. It's become one of the most highly requested HD remakes in recent years, and people even think there could be a Delfino Plaza Kingdom in Mario Odyssey as DLC. Now, I don't think that will happen, but I'd still love to see it. The game's switch from least popular Mario game to now arguably the most requested remake ever is astonishing. This trend of black sheep games being hated and then immediately being loved a few years later is pretty prevalent with all these titles. My favorite gaming franchise of all time is The Legend of Zelda, and my god have they made some great titles. Ocarina of Time, arguably the greatest game of all time. Breath of the Wild, arguably the greatest open world game of all time. Skyward Sword, the best story and iteration of Zelda of any title. Okay, some of you may not agree with me on that last point, but you know it's true! Every 3D game has a pretty similar story. Zelda gets captured by Ganondorf and Link needs to save her. It's a good thing all these characters have the same name or this could get very confusing. You may notice that there is one Zelda game that doesn't fit into that very broad one-sentence description. That game, of course, is The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. This game felt the same response as Mario Sunshine since it was the first 3D Zelda game released after Ocarina of Time. Being the follow-up to one of the highest rated games of all time is no easy task, and fans definitely just wanted more of Ocarina of Time, but that's not what they got. You do have some of the same items as Ocarina of Time like the bow, bombs, and hookshot, but that's not what this game is known for. You can access 24 different masks for Link to wear, each which give him a different ability, some of which even completely change his body. It entirely changes the way that you play the game, which is why people weren't too fond of it at the beginning. You start the game out as normal Link to make you think it'll just be like Ocarina of Time, but instead about 3 minutes into the game you become a Deku Scrub, and that's where everyone began their criticism. However, just like Mario Sunshine, this unique gameplay has made it a fan favorite over the years, which has led to its remake on the 3DS. You could also make the argument that Wind Waker is the black sheep of the franchise because of how different the graphics are and the backlash that followed its reveal. After the tech demo of Link and Ganondorf shown fighting at E3, everyone wanted a more mature Zelda title, but instead they got... although I wouldn't consider this too different from the other games, as the story is pretty comparable to the other titles and the gameplay isn't nearly as unique as Majora's Mask, except for pretty much the entire game just being a boat simulator. Super Mario Sunshine and Majora's Mask are two of the most widely known Black Sheep games just because of how popular their respective franchises are. But there are so many other Black Sheep games and other franchises that I just don't see get mentioned nearly as often. Pokemon is the most popular portable franchise of all time. I mean, the title is Pocket Monsters in Japan, so I think it was just meant to be. Every game follows the same formula. You catch Pokemon, defeat gym leaders or trials in Alola, and become League Champion. Sure, Coliseum and XD are different as you don't battle gyms, there's the whole Shadow Pokemon dilemma, but the gameplay with fighting Pokemon is still the same. The one title that I would consider the black sheep of the franchise would be Pokemon Snap. Instead of capturing Pokemon with Pokeballs, you capture them in pictures. Amazing idea, but it is a weird concept for a franchise based on forcing little adorable animals to fight until they pass out. Yeah, Pokemon is kind of dark when you really think about it. This wasn't the most popular title when it came out, but it has garnered quite a following for either a remake or a direct sequel, which I could totally get behind. Pokemon Snap only had the original 151 Pokemon to choose from, while we now have over 800 Pokemon. So much could be done with this idea, and with the power of the Nintendo Switch, the graphics could be amazing and even maybe use the Switch as a camera in the handheld mode to give the feeling of looking around. This is one of the sequels that may never happen, but I still want a lot. As the black sheep of the franchise, it may never get the sequel, but I still think it is one of the most unique and strange Pokemon titles that will ever be released. The most adorable video game character of all time is Yoshi. But if there was a second one, it would be Kirby. Kirby is known for sucking up enemies, killing them, and absorbing their abilities while still being adorable and marketed towards children. Kirby's titles are normally 2D platformers where Kirby uses several different abilities to heat games from the enemies that he faces along the way. But then he was turned into Yarn for some reason. Kirby's Epic Yarn is definitely a weirder Kirby title where you no longer absorb abilities from enemies, but instead Kirby's moveset revolves entirely around Yarn and different mechanics that the Yarn can take the shape of. Unlike other Black Sheep games, this wasn't immediately disliked as the games before this have been. Sure, the changes were definitely weird at the time, but maybe Kirby fans were just more open to change than others. I mean, as a Kirby fan, we have basically been playing the same game for over 20 years, so I definitely appreciate the change. This was also the first Kirby game on a home console to have multiplayer gameplay, where the second player can play as this fucking guy. Kirby and the Rainbow Curse is another game you could consider the black sheep of the franchise, but I just don't think it's gotten to the popularity level that I could even consider it a black sheep. That's probably because it was released on the Wii U, so only like 4 people ever played it. It's definitely a unique Kirby game, but I would still consider Kirby's Epic Yarn as the black sheep of the franchise. It's honestly one of my favorite Kirby games ever because it's just so different. Plus, with the upcoming remake on the 3DS, I'm hoping more and more people can be exposed to this title. Now, Sonic is one of the most iconic video game characters of all time. He's basically the only thing keeping Sega alive at this point, but it's kind of difficult to pinpoint a black sheep of his franchise. I mean, ever since Sonic 06, pretty much any halfway decent game will be considered a black sheep compared to the trash that we've gotten. Although, in all honesty, I think it's pretty obvious as to what game would be the black sheep of the Sonic franchise. Sonic Unleashed has the weirdest and most unique gameplay of any Sonic game. Most games are either great 2D platformers with an emphasis on moving quickly, while others are essentially just cutscenes where you need to press a button at the right time. And then there's this. What the f*** is this? There are normal stages during the daytime, but when nighttime occurs, Sonic turns into a werehog. Why do people think that putting were in front of an animal makes it sound scarier? It didn't work with Wallace and Gromit, and it didn't work here. Honestly, I feel like Sega saw what Nintendo did with The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, and they just tried to copy the whole Link turning into a wolf idea. But since Sonic is already an animal, they just made him into a darker and scarier version of himself. I do appreciate that they actually tried to change the formula of the game and at least gave us some resemblance of a new idea. I mean, at least they didn't remake the same game over and over and over again. Sonic Unleashed is an experience unlike any other Sonic game, which makes it the black sheep of the franchise. And although it doesn't have much competition with other Sonic games released around the same time, it does have its fans. Every franchise needs a black sheep because without it, the franchise can get too stagnant and one-dimensional. Change is necessary for any company or franchise to expand and grow in its respective market. And from what I have seen through past years, the best time to release this black sheep is either right after the best game in the series like Mario and Zelda to try to appeal to a wider audience, or maybe even create a brand new genre of said title, or after the worst game like Sonic, where nobody cares what you release as long as it's better than the last one. You may not realize it at the time, but many of these games are gems, and sadly they don't receive the recognition until years later. Too many people are fixated on what they want and what they think would be the best game, and aren't open to any new and different ideas. Sure, sometimes the changes are absolute garbage, but that's usually only for side games like Mario Party. Main series changes almost always work, and they deserve to be praised for their innovation. So many people would rather have a sequel to a game instead of just a brand new title, and I don't really understand that. I would personally much rather have a brand new title to give us a whole new experience. New titles add so many new ideas and so much innovation which can be felt for years to come, and they are a welcome addition to any franchise. Oh, what have I done?